Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this week's episode on Monday, September 14th, 2020. Last time we talked, Aaron, you had just gotten the Square Enix Marvel's Avengers game and played through and enjoyed it, but there was also some stuff you wanted to circle back on. So did you in fact circle back?
So far, yeah, we've gotten to touch on a little bit. One of my friends was on vacation, so as a courtesy, I did not play a few of my characters so that they would be the same level as his characters, because if I plow through the game and enjoy it all by myself, by the time he would have gotten back from vacation when we joined up, his character wouldn't have been able to join with mine because of the level difference was so great. So yeah, I left about half of my team unleveled, and then the other half I played, and I played the heck out of Thor and the heck out of Iron Man, because Thor with Mjolnir, when you throw the hammer and you hold out your hand and it comes back and it hits the enemy on the way out and then it hits him in the back of the head on the way back, it's so satisfying the second hit, right? Everything about it is just cool. The sound it makes, the way it flies. I mean, just everything. I love playing as Thor. Such a treat. But now that my friend's back, I'm playing some of my ground-based characters that can't fly. So a lot of leaping around with Hulk, a lot of stretching with Miss Marvel, and a lot of gunplay with Black Widow.
Very cool. Okay. Be intrigued as you continue to play through those characters, what you find out. But all right. One story we're not going to be doing a particularly deep dive on today is the Chris Evans photo story that broke over the weekend.
Oh, the puns that could be made with deep dive. Okay, moving on.
I think actually the thing that intrigues me most about this story is it happened, Saturday or thereabouts. So we're recording on a Monday. And this thing's already in the rearview mirror, largely on social media, which to me is it that Chris Evans has built up so much goodwill in the Hollywood community over the past decade or so. It's like, okay, you screwed up, moving on. Or is it the crazy news cycle that we live in now where, every day 10 impossible things happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, definitely a whole lot of that. I don't know. I would like to think that we've grown a little bit as a society, but I have this feeling that we haven't. And I still think that we're on the wrong side of a double standard right now. Because if this were a female, like say it was Scarlett Johansson, oh my goodness, there'd be links being shared all over the internet and there would be tongues a wagging and it would just be horrible. And I'm sure that there would also be some shaming, why has she got pictures of herself naked unless she's just a dirty, dirty girl? And now we got Chris Evans, who had a picture, and everyone's just saying, look away, nothing to see here, which I respect. I'm glad that that's the attitude right now. I just wonder if it would be different if it were one of the female MCU stars instead, if there would be a flip-flop reaction, because then I would be disappointed in you, fandom. Lower your head in shame, fandom.
That's an interesting insight. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so in Chris's, we all know that he's got anxiety issues, and we all know it was an accident, and the only problem with the internet is if you make an accident, the entirety of the world gets to witness it if they choose to click on whatever link it is that takes you to that accident. So you either have to be a Luddite and just not have a cell phone, never have your picture taken, like the old Amish believe, your soul is going to get stolen or something like that if you have your photo taken. You either got to go that far into it, or you just got to accept the fact that, be careful when you're doing screenshots and sends and sharing on your tweets what it is that you're actually sending, because, oh my goodness, that can ruin your day, week, month, year, career, depending on what you're sending out accidentally.
Or you could be someone like myself who has so little skill when it comes to using a phone.
The beauty of Jim Hill is you cannot tweet from your book.
There we go.
It's so safe to read a book.
Well, before we get started here, want to note that the news portion of today's show is brought to you by Storybook Destination, trusted travel partner of the Marvelous Disney podcast. For a worry-free travel experience, please book online at storybookdestinations.com. So we just talked about Chris Evans, who at this point is basically officially done with his Marvel Cinematic Universe duty, barring that episode of Marvel What If where Chris and Haley Atwell will be voicing the animated versions of Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. On the other hand, Chris Hemsworth, who obviously plays Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just made it very clear that he has no intention of following Chris Evans' example. And when I say that, I don't mean unfortunate Instagram posts.
A photo of Mjolnir.
There we go. Okay.
What a mighty hammer. Are you worthy to wield it? Oh God, there's so many ways that we could go with this.
Wow. Okay. Remember the thing we weren't talking about? Okay. Anyway.
This is a different hammer.
This is a different hammer. All right. There we go. All right. Mr. Hemsworth recently said in an interview with the Polish version of Elle magazine, the question came up, would Chris be following Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr.'s example and soon be exiting the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And Hemsworth's response was, are you crazy? I'm not going to retire. Thor is far too young for that. He's only 1,500 years old. But then he got pressed a little bit on in regard to the script to Thor and Love and Thunder. And what we know so far about this Taika Waititi film is that it's Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, who, oh God, this is not a good phrase to use at this point after what you just said, who winds up wielding Thor's mighty hammer.
Now, also, let's stop here and point out the age difference. 1,500 versus 30? Come on now, that's robbing the cradle, Thor.
Okay. Hemsworth has read the script, and while he doesn't want to give any of the plot away, he says Love and Thunder looks to be a lot more fun than Thor Ragnarok. There'll be a lot of love and lightning. But also he said, look, after everything that happened in Endgame, I'm just glad that my character is still part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and that we still get to continue the story of Thor. Without giving anything away, he said, look, Thor and Thunder is definitely not a movie where my character says goodbye to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or at least I hope not. So Thor, Love and Thunder, has a February 11th, 2022 release date. And in our last episode, we were talking about how Black Panther 2, which originally had a May 2022 release date, but now with Chadwick Boseman's tragic passing, looks like Ant-Man 3 is going to be dropped into that slot, and the casting announcement today pretty much bears that out, right?
It seems like if you're going to be making casting decisions all of a sudden, because I haven't heard anything about Ant-Man 3 in a minute, so all of a sudden, after the passing of Chadwick Boseman, this is one of the first announcements coming out of the MCU, well, then that would kind of indicate that they're moving forward on something. And that's Ant-Man 3, and if that's, was supposed to be after Black Panther, it would kind of indicate that maybe they're moving it up into that slot so that can give them a little more breathing room to figure out how they're going to handle that situation. So, yeah, and fandom went crazy when they found out about the casting, or I don't know if it was the casting so much as it was who he's rumored to be playing, because it's Kang the Conqueror, and who's going to be played by Jonathan Majors, who does phenomenally well in Lovecraft Country. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that on the HBO Max, but that's creepy good fun.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the internet kind of lost its mind when this broke earlier today, but that's for kind of an interesting reason. Can you explain what it is? That
speculation sprayed in every direction like blood from a slasher movie victim. It was crazy, the directions that the speculation just flew out everywhere. First, does that prove that Ant-Man is being slid into Black Panther's spot was the obvious question. We've just addressed that. Does this bridge us into a Young Avengers storyline? Because Kang has been a common foe to that team in the recent past, so a lot of people have been expecting that Hawkeye is going to be mentoring his daughter to be young Hawkeye girl, and she's going to end up coming in as a part of the Young Avengers, and people are making a connection to one of the TV shows that's not even been made yet, to a movie that's not even being made yet, and when they come out, time-wise, that may line up. So who knows, that may end up holding water in the future. But here's the one where it gets all crazy. Kang is possibly most likely related to Reed Richards, like 10,000 years in the future. So they're not like cousins. They're really far separated. And everyone was like, well, because Kang is being played by a black man, that means that Reed's got to be a black guy too. And so then everyone was fan casting all of these, people of color to be Reed Richards. And I'm not against that. I got to say, I'm not against them swapping the race and ethnicity of one character for another. They did it in the last Fantastic Four. Michael B. Jordan got to play as Johnny Storm. Had no problem with that. It didn't affect the movie's outcome in one way or another. That was not the problem with that movie. A lot of people will dump on that movie, but he was not the problem that made it fail. So it's possible that, Reed could be a person of color. That would be fine if they did that. But if you put 10,000 years between the birth of one human and another, color can change over 10,000 years, depending on who the mom and pop end up being, married to and along those timelines. So you've got time for stuff to change with that. And then finally, will that mean we get a Fantastic Four movie a lot sooner than we were anticipating? Does that mean it's right around the corner? And the answer to that is nope, not even a little bit. But if you think about that question and answer, then does that mean that Kang is similar to our next Thanos? Is he our next big bad, or is he just a bad for now?
He's existed as far back as 63. I want to say, in fact, didn't he come on the canvas as part of a Fantastic Four?
I would imagine so. I think he would be in the Kirby era, back in the olden day. And I've never really liked Kang because I always thought he looked kind of goofy. And trust me, I understand as a fan of Spider-Man and my love of Green Goblin, who is a character with a silly rubber mask. I get corny. It's fine. But he's just a blue dude that had a purple weird looking helmet. He was just, time traveling know-it-all. And so, yeah, he was everybody's thorn in their side. I think he may have started with the Fantastic Four. I mean, obviously, if he's related to him, but he starts so far in the future, and it was like he found a time machine invented by Dr. Doom, so that kept it in the Fantastic Four family. And then he goes back to the age of Apocalypse, back in the old Egyptian days.
That's right.
And then he's all of a sudden in the X-Men canon there. So it didn't matter if you had a marvelous team, you had a Kang that wanted to conquer you. I think he came out of Fantastic Four, and that's where everyone's latching on to we got to have a Fantastic Four movie. The minute after Ant-Man 3 gets done, expect a Fantastic Four announcement. I just don't think that's what's going to happen.
It's interesting you bring up future Marvel projects. Because remember, it was back in July of 2019, as part of their Hall H presentation, Marvel announced that they were going to be rebooting Blade. And not only that, but two-time Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali was going to be playing everyone's favorite vampire hunter from here on in. And since then, it's been relatively quiet on that front. But Marvel, when they're putting a new film, getting it off the ground, they set up a production company. And typically what they try to do is pick a name for the production company that only the Marvel superfans will get. I want to see where this one lands with you, Aaron. The name of supposedly the Blade production company is Grass-Fed Productions.
Yeah, love it. Perfect.
Okay. And why would you love that? What is that about?
Well, when you hear grass-fed, you think of a cow. A nice juicy steak. And if we're talking about vampires, they want a healthy human, right? They don't want one of them doughy, fatty ones. They want a good, clean one, a free-range human. So a grass-fed human is a really good human to start off with, right?
Okay.
I really kind of hope if Morbius does well with Jared Leto, if Sony and MCU will cross at that point between Blade the Vampire Hunter and Morbius the Vampire. The only problem I see with it is I think they're going to end up with a Freddy versus Jason scenario of pitting two franchise names against each other. You can't have one legitimately beat the other one. Or like King Kong versus Godzilla. They both got to win, or they both got to live in the end somehow. So I don't know if Sony would let there ever be a Blade versus Morbius, only so Blade can kill off Morbius.
I just have this uneasy feeling that once we get on the far side of our third Spider-Man Home Alone, whatever it is, we're going to see a divergence that Sony's going to, play in its sandbox and Marvel's going to play in its sandbox, and still hoping that Tom Holland is still able to come over. But it seems like as aggressive as Sony has been about new projects in the Spider-Verse, I just wonder how much cross-pollination they're willing to go for. And while we're talking about films that are getting ready to get out of the ground, we talked last week about the new director, Nia DaCosta, for Captain Marvel 2. When I was talking with the folks about getting the info about Grassfed Productions and how it was going to be shot in the UK, these folks at Marvel also mentioned, by the way, Captain Marvel 2 also going to be shot in the UK. But the weird part of it is to sort of circle back to Spider-Man, especially Far From Home. The new Captain Marvel 2 is supposed to be set in the modern day, so we're not back in the 1990s. It's also supposed to be shot not just at Pinewood, but also in the UK and at other locations in Europe. And there's just a part of me where it's like, didn't we just do this with Far From Home?
Well, I don't know, because Captain Marvel is a bit of a spacey hero. And I would not be surprised at all to see something like, is there any place in Europe that could be another world? Like scenically, if you're thinking about the mountains of a certain region, I think the Alps may be over photographed to be able to pass off as another land, but something like that.
I remember reading about when Disney was doing Return to Oz, but this was in the early 80s. They wanted to make a clear break from the 39, the original Wizard of Oz. And they figured the easiest way to do that was to shoot this thing on location. You took these places from Oz, like the Deadly Desert, and you literally took, folks to the Sahara and shot there. Or the ruins of Emerald City. I want to say they were going to go to Hadrian's Palace. But in the end, though, the budget got cut, and, ironically enough, just like the 39 film, they ended up being this basically soundstage-bound thing. I think they did a little, shooting on location in Canada. So you're right. Maybe that is the idea. Travel around Europe, find all of these places that look like other planets, and shoot there.
Right.
Also, to circle back on a topic we talked about on last week's show, the Anaheim Avengers campus, the e-ticket that's in the works for the Battle of Wakanda project that was obviously thrown for a loop by losing Chadwick Boseman. But Aaron, you brought up while we were doing that, it's like, as I described the attraction, it's like, exactly how big was this show building going to be? Because it sounded like it was impossible to house all of this action inside of one structure. And so spent a couple days digging around and actually came up with some concept art, which I've sent you out ahead of tonight's show. But you can see there that there's first the piece of concept art for the show we described last week, where they placed that full-size Quinjet on top of one of the show buildings in the Anaheim Avengers campus with a crane. And you can see actually the stunt show. I want to say it's Black Panther and Black Widow chasing some unnamed villain off of the rooftop. But the very next shot, now you've got your building with the Quinjet in the foreground. And then looming up behind it is this absolutely massive show building. To give you some idea of how truly big this is probably going to be, thanks to our Len and Mai's buddy BioReconstruct, we found the shot of Epcot, taken from a couple of thousand feet up. But you can see the full-size Spaceship Earth, and next to it, the old Universe of Energy building. But then behind that is this giant blue building, which is going to be where 90% of the action in Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind is staged. And, according to the folks at Disney, that building is big enough to house Spaceship Earth 5 times. So for the East Coast version of the big e-ticket, we're looking for at a structure that's probably as big as what Cosmic Rewind is going to be housed in. The building with the Quinjet will be there, when Anaheim Avengers Campus opens this fall. That is eventually going to be part of the entrance complex queue for the e-ticket. Years later, the show building that actually houses the e-ticket will be opened, and then going into the future, people who are queuing up for this ride are actually going to be able to look straight up and see the stunt show happening. But as my friend in Imagineering who mentioned, Disney's really only done this once before, where they built an entrance building and then later built the show building that the entrance building feeds into. And that was the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, the original one. That was built at the edge of the river overlooking Rivers of America back in 1963. And it wasn't till 6 years later that the Haunted Mansion actually opened to the public. And that was because it took them that long to final design and then to figure out how to send people under the railroad and out to a giant show building just beyond the berm.
Was there anything that you could do during that 6 years in the first building? Or was it just roped off? Really?
No, in fact, they put up this black painted metal fence, and they put up a sign where basically it was mentioning that if you wanted to join the 900 Happy Haunts, you could send a letter to Disneyland Ghost Relations, and they would review your resume and consider you for whether or not you could take up residence.
Well, I'll pay them in ghost money then while we're at it, but okay, sure.
I don't think anybody at Disney anticipated that, we build the building in 63 and we won't open the ride till 69. I don't think, nobody figured that Walt would die in 66, or for that matter, Disney would come back from the 64 World's Fair with all of this new technology, all of these new ride systems. It really wasn't until they invented the Omnimover where it's like, oh, okay, now we know how to do this. But that wasn't invented till 67 for Journey through Inner Space. So
here in the Avengers campus, this main building that has the Quinjet, it's a 2-story building. It looks like, maybe concrete and metal, but definitely lots of glass on the front side. I'm going to guess that you'll probably have a couple of Iron Man suits in there, maybe a Captain America shield put up on the wall. I mean, if it's going to be a place where you would queue through, and it's supposed to be the Avengers campus, wouldn't they kind of make this like a place where the Avengers are hanging out doing their daily stuff, and you'll see all the props? Will this, I guess I'm asking, will this be a walkthrough museum of cool Marvel stuff?
Our problem right now is we are dealing with COVID-19, and Disney has put a pause on over $900 million worth of construction. If it was already moving forward before the COVID-19 shutdown, it can still go forward. But if you didn't have steel going up, if you hadn't already poured concrete, that project stopped. Yes, the building is done, and yes, they already paid for the Quinjet, so that's going on the roof, and yes, they have plans for the stunt show, because we were already talking last week about, them holding the casting sessions. But if you're working in the prop department, and you were the guy who was tasked to fill that building, I have the uneasy feeling that you're going to be able to look in through the glass windows at a minimally decorated space for a while.
Before we jump off of the Avengers campus, the first two are obviously the building. However, the third picture looks like a big, huge splash panel out of Marvel Comics. There's no way that this is a stunt show, because half of the cast is flying, and we know that they're not going to be flying. So this image is a flight of fancy from...
No, actually, if you look in the left center, you will see what looks like a flying chair.
Oh, this is the actual rides.
This is the battle of Wakanda. At this point, you have flown out of the Quinjet in your battle chair, and you are assisting the Avengers as they try to save the capital of Wakanda from whatever this invasion is.
If it's in the context of the ride, I can see that being staged from element to element, where you see, Hulk smash one moment, you go zooming by, someone does, a beta blast, you go zooming on by. That could be really cool if they find a way to capture all of these individual moments, but I'm also noticing, Jim, that it looks like it is happening outdoors. Is that projection? Is that the gimmick for this, to do like what they did with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway?
Yes and no, because remember when Len came across that patent for an early version of the Spider-Man ride where you were basically supposed to hang at the end of like a pendulum?
Oh, the pendulum. Yeah, totally. Love the idea.
Swing through the canyons of the city. And the idea was they were going to use projection on the floor to sell you on the idea that you were 15 stories up. And that to either side, there were practical sets of actual apartment buildings. And the notion was that each time you swung, you came close to an actual apartment, it would look in and there'd be a show scene or that sort of thing. So this is supposedly the same thing with the e-ticket, but the notion is that you don't need to eat up all of your ceiling with an armature that can only carry a certain number of passengers at a time that has to travel through this giant show building. The very same Imagineer who pointed me to this material wanted to stress that it's like, we are still doing scope. We've got wonderful individual effects we can do that will convince you that you're right next to Hawkeye as he fires off an arrow, or you still have to go to the board of directors and go, hey, we need this much money. And especially right now, with so much stuff on hold and so much stuff, the concern at Imagineering is that we have all of these great ideas and we just don't know when Disney's ever going to be in a position again to say, yes, spend all the money, do that. So entertainment has changed in a very, very large way because of COVID-19. And when Aaron and I get back from break here, we're going to talk about how the coronavirus may yet again be screwing up Black Widow's plans.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana. Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
Not to be annoying, but I did want to point out that the movie that you said would never arrive in theaters, never make it just had its third weekend in domestic release.
And I bet they regret that decision and wish they had never come out and taken my damn advice.
Well, you're probably not wrong. Did you see how much money it made this past weekend?
No.
Still number 2 at the box office. It only made...
how many... let's break out some facts and numbers to go along with that. Mm-hmm. What else actually, besides Tenet, because we know that was number 1, what else has been out besides those 2 movies? Can you name any of them? Anyone?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. For example, a drive-in just down the street from us, they were doing like Goonies and Gremlins, and I mean, they were, they do a Harry Potter double feature. I mean, them that were back in the business, there wasn't a whole lot of new product. But even with this being new product, third weekend in release only sold 2.1 million worth of tickets, which, when you understand that Tenet, and again, brand new Tenet, brand new Christopher Nolan film, only managed to sell $6.7 million worth of tickets. It's one of those things where you kind of put it in perspective that way, but even so, those are ridiculously anemic numbers.
So the short version to the studios is wishful thinking does not beat reality?
According to the survey that Harris Poll folks just did, 71% of the adults that they polled said they would not feel safe in a movie theater right now. When New Mutants first opened in theaters, tail end of August, 62% of the theaters in the country were open. As of right now, it's 70, but at the same time, it's 70, but they're either operating at 25 to 50% of capacity. Even if they do today's equivalent of full houses, they're still only selling 25 to 50% of the tickets they sold in their prime. So it's probably not a coincidence that after Warner Brothers had a week's worth of business to look at ticket sales for Tenet. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if you saw the stories, but Warner Brothers, for the first time ever, was not sharing with the other studios how well Tenet was doing. I mean, normally there's this kind of a professional courteous situation. We did this over the weekend, we sold this many tickets. And Warner Brothers, this time around, just would not reveal that info. But just this past weekend, as part of the second DC fandom event, they announced that Wonder Woman 1984 was moving again. It was shifting its release date from October 2nd all the way to December 25th. That's 12 weeks, Aaron.
As well it should. Well, no, first, it should have come out like a year ago before we had to worry about COVID. I don't even know what it was that made them change their mind and push back at that moment. But it was a bad decision and they all regret it now, I'm certain. But now, after seeing a big, huge name director, never had a failure, big, bombastic sound and score and actors and budget the size of Jupiter, and it fails miserably. Why? Because there's a pandemic going on, man. You can't wish stuff away. So, yeah, I think the studios are going to see when Christopher Nolan takes a lump on the noggin for not making the money back, it's because they released it at the wrong time. And they thought that they go, well, if we put the right bait out there, all the fish are going to come and it's going to be a feeding frenzy for everybody. And people are scared, man, and it's not the right time. So I guess lay off. We can't release it on Disney Plus, as we mentioned before, because if you release everything now on your streaming service, when we do get past COVID, the theaters will have no content when they are able to open up, and they're going to die in that way. So we have to save something for them. So I think the studios have to do the right thing now, which is put everything on hold. Don't even come up with a second release date. Just say it's on hold. When stuff gets better, we'll talk then. Until then, stuff's not normal. You get it. It's not our fault. We're trying to be safe and not lure people into a closed room by the dozens and lock you in for 2 hours so you can sit there and breathe on each other.
Well, it's also worth noting here that part of the studio thinking was, okay, so we still have issues here in the States. I mean, by the time the show drops on the 18th, supposedly 200,000 people will have died in the States. But overseas, it was supposedly a different situation. It was that they had it under control. In fact, that was the rationale at both Warner Brothers and Disney. It's the effect of, okay, so we won't do well in the States, but at least internationally, China's open. We can put it out there. So Tenet goes out there and Mulan goes out there. And the New York Times today, the headline for the article was, Disney's Mulan disappoints at the Chinese box office. They only did $23 million over their opening weekend. And nobody at Disney was expecting that. In fact, they had convinced themselves that if there was no COVID, Mulan would have been yet another one of Disney's billion-dollar earners, and a lot of that money would have been strictly made in China. There's a couple of side issues here with the China release of Mulan. Liu Yifei, the actress who played the title character, voiced her support for the Hong Kong police during the pro-democracy things, and there were calls to boycott the movie because of that. And then Disney made the decision to shoot some of the live action of this in Xinjiang province. Because again, hey, nobody's ever shot there before, and we want a unique look for the film. Unfortunately, this northwest portion of China is where the Chinese government maintains its detention camps for the Uyghur Muslims. So those two were artificial drags on the movie. But at the same time, this is a $200 million movie, Aaron, with another $50 to $75 million that was spent on promotion. So $29 a pop to sell it, as a premium offering on Disney Plus, or for that matter, $232 million worth of tickets selling in China over the opening weekend. You're not going to recover your production cost for that.
I would love to find out, and I doubt we'll ever get this number, but I really want to know how many Disney Plus subscribers paid the $30 price tag, was it, for to be able to watch it, for the rental?
I'm working on those numbers, but my friend at Disney Plus flat out told me, he said, look, part of the problem here is that we got so many damn subscribers for Hamilton. People just came out of the woodwork and, oh my God, I have to see this.
I would say give me the numbers of your subscribers before Hamilton and then tell me how many people purchased Mulan. I bet you it's a very small number in the grand scheme of things.
As soon as I get those numbers, I'll share. But okay, back to Marvel's Black Widow. Remember, originally supposed to open up spring of this year, May 1st. In April, because of COVID, gets pushed off to November 6th. Marvel's Black Widow had been in development at Marvel Studios for more than a decade. Scarlett Johansson talks about how Kevin Feige first talked to her about a standalone Black Widow movie while they were doing PR for Iron Man 2. Just like Mulan, very expensive proposition. It's just 7 weeks before Black Widow is supposed to arrive in theaters. And if you're an executive at Disney Theatrical right now, you're looking at Tenet and Mulan struggling at the box office for a variety of reasons. You have that Harris poll about 71% adults who don't feel safe about going to movie theaters. And you just saw Warner Brothers blink. Or was that panic? And push back the release of Wonder Woman 1984 by 12 weeks from October 2nd to Christmas Day. And meanwhile, you look ahead and you've got Eternals set up for a February 2021 release. Shang-Chi is going into theaters just 12 weeks after that on May 7th. And then there's kind of a 6-month lag before the next live-action Spider-Man, the sequel to 2017's Homecoming and 2019's Far From Home, arrives in theater in December of 2001. And even then, there's an 8-week gap between when that arrives in theaters and when Thor Love and Thunder shows up in February of 2021. That 6-month gap between Shang-Chi and the third Spidey is what's going to save their ass. That at least allows them to yet again move the tiles around the board.
They don't know. They don't know a damn thing right now. They don't know what's going to happen, so why even try to mess with the calendar?
I asked the same question. Why even pick out a new date? And it's just sort of like, because we have our partners in exhibition, and in turn, all of these movie theaters have employees. We can't just say, screw it, we're going to wait for a vaccine, because that means that industry dies.
If you can't have the public come into the theater because they're scared, 70% of your audience just said, I ain't coming to your theater because I'm scared. Mm-hmm. And you're going to release movies anyway. Mm-hmm. So 30% of your potential audience is already destined for failure. First off, they want to keep their job. Mm-hmm. And if their job is putting a date on a calendar, guess what they're going to do? Put a date on a calendar. Harvey, what are you doing? Put a date on a calendar. Good job, Harvey. That's what they're doing right now, is they're keeping their job. The reality is they don't know what's happening with the world. They know that 70% of their potential audience is gone. It's not a good time to release in theaters, but they're going to do it anyway, and they're just going to wish upon a star that everything will be twinkly and bright and perfect and wonderful if the right thing comes out. And guess what? Christopher Nolan's got a lump on his head that will testify, no, don't work that way.
From when New Mutants opened, August 28th, we had 62% of the theaters open. Then the following weekend, 65. Now 70. And I know we have that Harris poll that says 71% of adults are afraid to go back to a movie theater now. But the notion is that with these theaters that are open in the country, 70% of them right now, operating at 25 to 50% capacity. But the hope at the studio level is people who have gone back to the movie theaters are talking with their friends about, hey, I saw New Mutants, I saw Tenet, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time. And the next time a new movie comes out, let's go.
The only thing that means to me right now is the second that Tenet came out started a clock for me to count down when Tenet comes out on VOD. That's all that means to me right now. It's not just the fact that it's 70% of the crowd doesn't want to go. You got to do the math of only 70% of the theaters are open and only 30% of the audience is willing to go into that 70% of theaters, which can only hold 25 to 50% of your audience anyway. I mean, split that number down any finer.
You're right. The business plan right now of only this 30% of people who are brave enough to go to these movie theaters that only operate at 25 to 50% of capacity, with the hope that this turns around the industry. And you're a movie, you're a movie studio who spent $200 million to make your movie. And again, 7 weeks now, 7 weeks from today the show airs to when Black Widow is supposed to arrive in theaters. And if you're Disney, are you willing to take that bet right now?
Go even further, Jim, of look at your choices of, whether you like Christopher Nolan or not. He's a great director, and yeah, a lot of people love him, but really you've got two choices. You've got an X-Men spinoff of a franchise that we already consider dead, and then you got Tenet, but there's really no diversity. We were talking about the whole Asian market and Silk as a character to kind of lure them into something to watch. We're talking about one big movie, but if Hollywood was working as normal and we had 900 offerings this week in the box office, because my dad does not give one spit of interest about a mutant, much less a new one. So he's not going to be tempted to go enter a theater over a New Mutant. And he doesn't know who Christopher Nolan is, so he doesn't give a damn about that name either. So you have to consider, on a global scale, we need more than just 1.5 movies to exist for the industry to recover. You got to get back to normal. And if it's not back to normal and you're just limping along with something that you had on the shelf and you're just throwing meat out there, it's not going to be eaten. It's going to rot. That's the difference. And that's why I think the whole process is really stupid right now. Of, you guys realize we're still struggling in certain areas, and you need New York and California. And guess what? God. California is all on fire. Nobody in California gives two shits about a movie right now. The whole state's on fire. But, hey, we got to save the film industry, so let's release Christopher Nolan's movie and pray that fixes everything. I'm sorry, Jim, but the biggest problem of us as humans, as a species, is we always have a very, very, very complex problem, and we think we can solve it with one simple thing. We need a simple Band-Aid that will fix all of the world's woes, and it's just not that easy. It's always a very complex, multi-layered, 38-pronged process that usually fixes the thing, and we're not able to think that deep past it. The movie studio can only think about, well, we can only release a movie or not release a movie. Those are the only two strategies that exist in the entire world. I have to go have a 6 martini lunch because I'm exhausted now.
You're not wrong.
I feel like grumpy old man, but I want to have a dose of reality. I can't just be cheery and go, everything will be fine, guys. Everything will be just hunky-dory. Just go ahead, release your movie, and everybody will flock to the theater because it's entertainment, and we all need a dose of that right now. And it's like, yeah, we do, but I'm also subscribing to 32 streaming options right now. I don't have to get off my couch and risk my life for a movie.
Like I said, 7 weeks before Black Widow was supposed to arrive in theaters, and if I'm a betting man, within the next month, we're going to hear about that film getting pushed off into 2021. So when that happens, Aaron and I will talk about it on this podcast, which is part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. We also have a lot of other shows here, folks. We have Disney-ish with Len Testa. We have Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. We have Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z. We have the Universal Joint Podcast with Dustin Fuse. If you could do Aaron and I a favor and head over to iTunes and rate and recommend this show. And if you really, really, really enjoyed what you heard here tonight, if you get over to Bandcamp and subscribe, You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Jim Hill Media and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News, and we look forward to seeing you there. And Aaron and I look forward to chatting with you again, hopefully with happier news. And till then, thanks for listening.